This video is brought to you by Nebula, where you can watch this video in its entirety completely uncensored and ad-free. Check out my unique link in the description for 40% off your subscription today. On the evening of November 2nd, 2021, Peng Shuai, the former doubles world #1 ranked Chinese tennis player, posted an alarming message to followers of her Weibo account, a popular Chinese social media platform. Within, the famous athlete publicly disclosed how she had been subject to SA and endured years of emotional manipulation and abuse of power at the hands of former Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli, a retired top-level member of the Chinese Communist Party. Though China for years has faced intense outside criticism for its highly questionable handling or outright suppression of the Me Too movement, Peng Shuai's public accusation marked the first time a member of the top echelons of the CCP has ever faced such allegations. Since that day, Peng Shuai all but disappeared from public view, with no comment or explanation from China regarding her apparent forced absence despite international calls from world leaders and organizations demanding independent and verifiable proof of her safety. An ongoing crisis that continues to this day, with recurring dubious emails from Peng, suspicious social media posts, and rare public appearances in which she may appear to be acting under duress. Today we're taking a step back to examine the entire timeline of this bizarre case from accusation to present day, including what Peng's precarious future under the CCP curtain may hold. Though Peng Shuai's situation is undoubtedly the highest profile tennis scandal to ever emerge from the Eastern nation's confines, to fully digest it requires understanding China's tumultuous history within the sport, including their bizarre treatment of athletes and inherently flawed development system. So I highly recommend you click the on-screen card or link in the description to watch my past video on the subject to brush up before making your way back here. If you've already seen or have now returned to this video, you'll know that from birth to retirement, Chinese athletes have historically possessed virtually zero decision-making abilities in terms of what sport they play, who coaches them, where they're allowed to play, or who they're even allowed to date. Their main requirement and purpose of life being to bring glory and pride to motherland China. For much of her early life, Peng's career followed a similar trajectory. Introduced to tennis at 8 years old and sent away to her district's state-run training center at 13, the young Chinese's life appeared to mirror that of the thousands of other fellow children expected to train hard, win Olympic medals, and retire quietly. Early on in her professional career, however, Peng, along with 3 other tennis-playing compatriots, decided to rebel against China's state training program, outright refusing to play unless they were granted independence from the stifling rules, regulations, and contracts otherwise forced upon every Chinese athlete. Though officials eventually gave in to demands and subsequently allowed the 4 players the right to manage their own careers, the Chinese-controlled press harshly criticized the players' actions, specifically branding Peng as unpatriotic, a connotation that most likely placed her career under China's radar as a potentially problematic athlete. Until recently, however, though Peng never achieved the overall tennis superstardom earned by compatriot and former singles Grand Slam champion Li Na, Peng was a massive Chinese celebrity in her own right, having won multiple Grand Slam doubles titles and attaining the #1 world ranking in doubles back in 2014. While her highly decorated career created the facade of a well-adjusted, normal Chinese athlete proud to have served her country's interests, deep inside, Peng was fighting a battle against herself. Struggling to contain the deep and scandalous secret she knew revealing jeopardized not only her career, but her life. Thus begins the timeline that leads us back to today. But of course, that story doesn't just begin with the Weibo post. We need to go back a bit further, 10 years further. Though no firm date has been confirmed, by Peng Shuai's own account, the year 2011 was when she, an already established 25-year-old star ranked as high as 14 in the world, first acquainted with Zhang Gaoli, the then 65-year-old Communist Party secretary of China's Tianjin province, the same municipality where Peng's tennis training center was located. At some point during this time period, either a one-time act or continual affair occurred, by which all accounts was consensual in some regard. This relationship was put to a firm end when Zhang was promoted to Senior Vice Premier of State Council in 2013, where the former abruptly severed all ties with Peng, leaving the tennis star confused and betrayed. Roughly 5 years after last contact, a recently retired, now 72-year-old Zhang once again located the 32-year-old Peng's whereabouts. One morning after requesting her company for a friendly round of tennis, Zhang invited Peng back to his house for a meal with his wife, a cordial gesture with insidious intentions. Once there, Zhang had someone stand guard outside his bedroom and began pressuring Peng to once again have relations with him. Peng verbally stated many times she was unwilling, began crying, and later claimed she was terrified and anxious. Eventually, however, after a long period of insistence and coercion, she relented. Though a clear example of SA by intimidation, the act resumed the somewhat consensual affair, where Peng's confessed feelings of love heavily conflicted with the emotional toil of dating a person who otherwise refused to acknowledge her existence when not in private, internally claiming thoughts of humiliation, unfairness, and oppression. As he refused to divorce his wife considering his past political stature and potential ramifications, the affair continued until November 2, 2021, where following an argument the elder Zhang called Peng to once again abruptly end the relationship, betraying the tennis star's trust by disappearing in a fashion very similar to 7 years prior. This time, however, Peng Shuai had had enough, and decided for the second time in her life to truly take matters into her own hands.
This morning, a deepening mystery around Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai.
Accused a top Chinese government official of
Peng's presence has been all but erased from China's internet.
That very evening, Peng published the faithful multi-paragraph statement on Weibo detailing most aspects of the affair, including the relationship's timeline, the SA, the shame and humiliation she felt, and most importantly, her reluctance to stand by while a member of Chinese elite used his position to use and toss her aside at his whim. Though news outlets, forums, and Western social media were quick to pick up the story, within 20 minutes Peng Shuai's original post was permanently taken down, with any other post, comment, or passing mention of Peng Shuai or the case, search terms even as broad as the word tennis, censored and scrubbed from Weibo's servers, as if absolutely nothing had happened. From this day forward, Peng disappeared from public view, with virtually nothing heard since to verifiably confirm the well-being of one of China's most famous citizens. After roughly 2 weeks of virtual media silence, Steve Simon, CEO of the Women's Tennis Association, or WTA, made the first official public statement on the matter, saying, "The recent events in China concerning a WTA player, Peng Shuai, are of deep concern. As an organization dedicated to women, we remain committed to the principles we were founded on: equality, opportunity, and respect. Peng Shuai, and all women, deserve to be heard, not censored. We are speaking out so justice can be done." Conversely, the following day, Andrea Gaudenzi, chairman of the Association of Tennis Professionals, or ATP, issued a similar but far more vague statement of support, where in very indirect terms merely stood in support of the WTA's call, rather than forming a direct call to action themselves. Whereas an uneasy silent tension had thus far clouded the case's apparent severity and press response, a copy of an email purportedly sent to WTA Steve Simon from Peng Shuai herself on the 17th incited the initial international media storm that continues today. Within, as shared by the CGTN China State-affiliated Twitter account, Peng appears to not only refute the claim that she is missing or unsafe, but outright denies the SA allegations she herself had posted on Weibo just 2 weeks prior, all while praising the efforts of Chinese tennis. Of course, if the bizarre nature and content of the email wasn't suspicious enough, people were quick to point out that a computer cursor was still visible in their email screenshot, suggesting that perhaps the CGTN or separate Chinese government faction had instead written and screenshotted the email draft themselves. Within hours, Steve Simon released a second statement, claiming the email only raised concerns as to Peng's safety and whereabouts, as he had a hard time believing Peng wrote the email, repeating demands of independent and verifiable proof of her safety. In support of the WTA at this point in time was various professional tennis players and other activists spreading awareness of the situation by voicing their concerns with the trending hashtag, #WhereIsPengShuai? With reports of Peng's story now reaching the front page of various international news outlets, Chinese state-affiliated media used the opportunity to double down on its awkward efforts to not only visually prove Peng's safety and apparent free will, but act as if nothing was ever amiss in the first place. One Chinese source posted screenshots to Twitter showing a third-party's supposed WeChat conversations with the tennis star, with pictures showing a smiling Peng with the message, "Happy weekend," though critics pointed out it was unclear when and by whom the photos were actually taken. A separate Chinese source posted 2 videos to Twitter the following day showing Peng in public for the first time since the original Weibo post, in what appears to be a clumsy attempt to subtly prove the video is not old or doctored in response to the previous day. Both videos heavily emphasize the date, with a man in the first video saying, "Tomorrow is November 20th, multiple times, while the second video momentarily focuses on a printed sign showing the date. The same source hours later shared a video of Peng at the opening ceremony of the FILA Kids Junior Tennis Challenger Finals in Beijing, with the caption, "Can any girl fake such sunny smile under pressure? Those who suspect Peng Shuai is under duress, how dark they must be inside. There must be many, many forced political performances in their countries." This tweet and associated choice of wording came at a critical moment of time where instead of continuing to brazenly ignore Peng's situation, Chinese state media interestingly changed tactics to instead frame Peng's status as an ideological struggle between China and the West. Why the change? Well, around the time period, major news, sporting, and political organizations were openly condemning the supposed forged email attributed to Peng. The International Olympic Committee, or IOC, instead issued their own statement, saying, "We have seen the latest reports and are encouraged by assurances that she is safe." Huh? In a further bizarre twist, the IOC followed the statement by announcing that they had held not one, but 2 separate video calls with Peng, her first ever third-party verified reappearance, in which she supposedly said that she was safe and well, living at her home in Beijing, but would like to have her privacy respected at this time. The term supposedly used, as no video or audio was released from the call. Now, what did the IOC have to gain here by downplaying or outright whitewashing the case's severity, despite their own organizational mission statement claiming an opposition to any political abuse of athletes? Simply put, the Olympic Games themselves. With the Winter Olympics set to begin in Beijing, China just months later in February of 2022, critics describe the IOC's evasive and purposely detached response as a media exercise designed to allay heightened threats of diplomatic boycotts, a stance previously taken on a number of other human rights tragedies within the country. Now, it's important to note at this point that despite the entirety of the story thus far having taken place just weeks after the initial Weibo post to international outrage and condemnation, it's now been almost 2 years since Peng's disappearance, with more questions left unanswered today regarding the tennis star's welfare than ever before. As expected and as orchestrated from the very beginning by Chinese state media, the dearth of new information available since has rendered any continued news coverage impossible. Though Peng in the intervening years has made rare interview appearances, during one of which she announced her permanent retirement from professional tennis, the carefully managed and orchestrated nature of her comments has done little to appease critics, and in a recent stinging reversal, it appears even her most vocal and pivotal supporter has since bowed in submission to Chinese pressure. You see, as opposed to the ATP's downright refusal to take substantive action in reaction to the case, very early on, the WTA had announced immediate suspension of all WTA events held in China and Hong Kong, saying, "Unless China takes the steps we have asked for, we cannot put our players and staff at risk by holding events in China." These 2 steps, direct uncensored contact between Peng and the WTA, along with a full transparent investigation of Peng's claims of SA. Of course, though realistically doubtful that the comparatively minuscule influence of WTA could bring about meaningful affirmative action within the ironclad CCP curtain, a permanently severed relationship would without doubt be a detrimental blow to China's burgeoning multi-billion-dollar tennis market, forcing a potential statewide scramble for alternative tennis solutions. In the end though, despite maintaining the boycott for over a year, shifting schedules, and relocating major tour events, the WTA gave in, lifting the suspension and all further sanctions, with CEO Steve Simon stating, "The stance that we took at the time was appropriate, and we stand by that. But 16 months into this, we're convinced that our requests will not be met, and to continue with the same strategy doesn't make sense." He went on to say that, by returning, hopefully more progress can be made. But after such a concerted effort, with little to show for it, why return at all? And why now? Simply put, money. A lot of money. In what could be summarized as an organization that bet on the wrong horse, WTA's tournament portfolio leading up to the scandal relied heavily and heavier each passing year on the Chinese market, where in 2019, 9 nationwide tour events accounted for more than $30 million in allocated prize money alone, including the recent move of the WTA finals from Singapore to the Chinese city of Shenzhen, the biggest commercial agreement to ever be signed in women's sport worth a reported $1 billion. In a battle of ethics versus financial solvency, the interim 2021 boycott season saw widening pay gaps between the men's and women's tours, steeply increasing operating losses, outside investment many theorized helped cover Chinese revenue loss, and a hastily moved and little promoted WTA finals event in Fort Worth, Texas lambasted across the internet for its appalling attendance figures. By investing its organizational fate so heavily in China, the WTA effectively pawned its future away without a receipt. A precarious yet perennial relationship that more likely than not rears its volatile head once more in the near future. Today, however, with China placated and the WTA once again operating as once was, it's Peng Shuai alone that finds herself in a situation not dissimilar to the circumstances that prompted her initial Weibo confession. Betrayed, condemned, and above all, silenced. What might Peng's life hold for the future? Though most Western shock and disapproval towards China's draconian political actions have in the past amounted to very little change, Peng Shuai's plight is unique in that China's Communist Party worked not only to fend off mounting international pressure of boycotts and sanctions, but continues to simultaneously appease domestic public concern regarding one of their most well-known celebrities, a scandal that universally touches on widespread societal concerns of party privileges and rampant sexism in the secretive state. though her near future ultimately remains uncertain, the brave efforts undertaken by Peng Shuai to publicly unmask the unspoken depths and wrongdoings of China's untouchables might just provide her vindication down the line. A high-profile exposure whose positive ramifications can reach farther than ever imagined. On the topic of censorship, it should come as no surprise that due to this story's sensitive nature, this video, along with others I've created for this channel in the past, have had to be re-edited, reworded, and many times cut in length to comply with YouTube's strict content guidelines. And despite that, many times still gets demonetized and view restricted, which in the past has prevented me from making videos on topics I deemed too risky for the YouTube algorithm. Thankfully though, there's a solution, thanks to the power of Nebula. On Nebula, you'll not only find all Cult Tennis videos completely uncensored and completely ad-free, but you'll also gain exclusive access to Second Serve, my ongoing bonus video series that covers extremely interesting tennis topics not always fit for the YouTube algorithm. In addition, of course, you'll also get access to loads of early access videos, high-quality creator-led classes, and full-length original series from other creators you've heard of also exclusive to Nebula. As a creator-owned, subscription-based platform, Nebula allows creators like myself to continue producing the high-quality YouTube content you've come to expect, in addition to exclusive videos not found anywhere else. By signing up using my special link on screen right now, you can still receive 40% off a regularly priced subscription, getting you access to Nebula for just $2.50 a month. This is truly the best way to support this channel and the production of all future Cult Tennis content. I'll see you over there.